Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of our ongoing coverage on Grounded. So yesterday we got our big patch, which was super exciting. And then today they dropped another huge bomb, which is basically their roadmap, more or less. And then we got a list of a bunch of features and stuff that they're planning to do in the future. So this is super exciting because we finally get clarification on stuff that's been speculated a ton on, and other stuff that just hadn't quite... We didn't have clarified. We just got information or speculation from other YouTubers or other forums and stuff like that. But this is straight from the devs, so that's what's important here, I think. So at the beginning there, at the very top, we have main features that they're trying to implement, which we just saw the zipline. It's not featured yet, but it's in there. We've got... Actually, I'll zoom in just a little bit here so we can take a better look at this. But yeah, we've got new buildings, so we've got the zip line, koi pond environment, which we knew about. Items don't use backpack space. They talked about that already. So the hedge environment getting a rework, which is super cool. I figured they would do something with the base, but the area itself seemed fine enough as it is, if not a little empty. So that's cool that they're going to do a lot more with that. That's awesome. Super excited about that. We figured probably that would happen, though, just because of the... hedge queen or hedge boss, that we have over there, the name spider. So we kind of figured that would happen, but it's good to get clarification that they're going to do a lot more with it. Which I would actually say that's probably going to be relatively soon. I would say the koi pond will probably still be first, but the hedge might be... I don't know, it depends, because they're already starting to work on the pond over in that area, so maybe they'll do more with it. But I think the pond is probably the closer one, and I think that's sort of why it's listed ahead of time, but we'll see. Password protected games, which I haven't had an issue with, but I could see that being something people would want. Friend invites being easier, I would assume, is what that means, by just because you can already invite friends. But yeah, making that a little more streamlined would be helpful. Mosquito, again, we knew that. We saw the quest for it ahead of time. Same with the bee. Water themed equipment, we knew about that. Quality of life stuff, sure. Signs, sticker, base decorations. Now that could be super cool. I imagine that's probably going to... I hope it is actual stickers for like walls and stuff, which I feel like would take the place of like hung artwork and that kind of thing. Obviously, we already have like the mantled bug heads and weapons and stuff, but I think stickers would be... narratively make sense, and I think that would look really neat, and to give a little more flair to your base and stuff like that, which for me, who appreciates the building side of this game a lot, I think that would be... I'm very excited about that. Management improvements on inventory, I think that was obvious. I don't quite exactly know what additional crafting stations means, but I'm guessing it either means more of the huts that we find, like with the analyzer, or that means we're getting different types of crafting workbenches, potentially, or it just means in the world there are going to be more places to craft outside of ones that you make yourself, which actually that probably is more in line with what I think will happen, but again, we don't know. Burgle Quest and then storage management, which those two I figure we kind of already knew. Here's a bigger one though. This is more well, this is some stuff we really wanted, so this is interesting. Firefly's a big one, but we already saw that. Roly Poly we didn't see, and that's very exciting. Just because of where I just moved, we get them a lot, and I've almost forgot that they existed, but I'm excited because there's The potential for armor based on that, I think, is pretty high, just because they're pretty sturdy bugs, and I feel like we would get good armor out of that. Maybe even some weapons based around them. I would say that would maybe be one we would tame at some point too. That my guess. Story Act 1, which is cool because we've obviously a lot of people have complained about there not being a ton of story content in there already, which is to be expected again for it being a early access game at the moment. But knowing that even what we have is not the first act is good. That means we're potentially getting a ton more content for story stuff, which I have to assume we would have. But that is very good clarification to say, hey, what you have now is not the Act 1, and there's more to that. So that's super exciting. Graphic improvements, that's pretty obvious. Full completable story, obviously, that's... that has to be a part of it. But here's a big one. Inset pets, aphids. So we kind of figured we were going to get pets. They sort of mentioned that loosely, and that's something they talked about. But having... the aphids already kind of seem like a little bit of a small dog or something. So having that come with you, super exciting. Also, if it is able to be attacked, super sad. But I think it'll be cool to have them regardless. That's something people have asked for. So big stuff there. That's very cool. And that just opens the door also for us to be able to have other insects, obviously, that are tameable or pets or something like that. So that's super neat. I imagine like gnats will probably be one. Bees would probably be a harder one to get because they're a neutral creature from what I'll show you here in a bit. So yeah, I think that's cool. Again, it opens the door. Ant pheromone control seems cool because that's sort of in the same vein, and that could mean more or less like you have something on you that sort of helps you command an ant army. I would almost hope, I know there's not classes to this game, but I would almost hope that now that we have genes and stuff to spec, I think it would be pretty rad if you had the ability to be like some kind of bug controller as a class. Like you could have, like say, almost like a hunter, basically. Like you would send your pet in and then you would have your bow to do damage and stuff like that, which could be pretty open-ended based on just, your tool set, because you could probably still get in there in melee and stuff like that. But that would be super rad. I've been playing a lot of this game Divinity, and it's given me a lot of ideas for a lot of other game design stuff just because of how open-ended that game is. And I think you could implement some of that stuff here for sure. Ant Queen was another one. Actually, if you guys have been following the videos I've been doing, the guy that had been running the fake Instagram account mentioned this as something that was going to happen about a month ago. So that's kind of, again, it leads me to speculate, but that is something that they're saying is now going to be in there, which is cool. And again, I think it's another thing that we kind of expected because the ants, it's a big part of ants. I don't know what culture is the right word, but ants, lifestyle. They have a queen that they sort of serve and all that. So I think that'll be super neat. On another note too, if you didn't notice, they did seem to fix ant eggs because I couldn't find any at all, and then I logged in yesterday after the update and I found 30 of them immediately. So I think they fixed it, but who knows. Sandbox and haze environment, that's both super cool. The haze especially because it's already really eerie and a bit weird to be in there as it is. So some more mutated-esque bugs or ones that are affected by this I think would be super awesome, because it's just, the game already has this ability to make you feel both very joyful and happy and then immediately into pure terror. And I think an environment that is already terrifying on the outright, this hazy kind of almost dream-esque area that is poison gas and you can't really be in there, and then the bugs that are already there are more aggressive, and they, even the weevils come and explode like little bombs and stuff. That opens up an area that could be very potentially super interesting narratively, and then also just, again, based on game mechanics and other stuff, and just detail. There's already some plants and stuff growing in there that you can interact with that looks super strange, so it'd be interesting to see what they do with that. Same with the sandbox. I feel like it probably won't, I don't know that it would come to this, but I imagine since we already have grubs and sort of the architecture for bugs that do burrow a bit, having some sort of creatures that live in the sand or burrow beneath and stuff like that. The only thing about that is I think the environment itself is set up a little differently to not necessarily plan for that, just because of, it's not like Minecraft or something where you can dig through the ground or anything like that, or sort of adjust the environment itself. Like the environment is pretty stagnant, which I think serves them better because they can make those adjustments to sort of change whole environments or areas for just certain things they want to do. And especially if this game continues past the story, which I personally hope it does. It's one of those few games where I almost wish it was a game as a service. I don't think it'll end up that way, but it would be cool if they did add events and other stuff and just change environments for certain sets of time and other stuff like that. Because if you're thinking about the backyard as a whole, that stuff does happen. Like if there's a large rain or something, or snow or autumn or whatever. And that may be a bit overzealous for the scope of the game itself, but I think potentially it could be in there depending upon how well this game takes off. So we'll see. So those two are cool because that definitely means we're getting more fleshed out. That's at least, from what I'm seeing now, 3 zones specifically that are getting fleshed out more. So we have the haze, the sandbox, and then the hedge itself. Those are 3 completely zone, and the pond, so 4. So we're getting 4 zones already that we know for sure. And then I would say the picnic area will more than likely get a rework because it's very barren at the moment. I would also say the shed will probably be its own biome inside there, which I imagine will be some kind of like.
Hey, nice to meet you.
I think it will be kind of similar to the haze, almost like a haunted house sort of deal in a way, like just very creepy. But we don't know. But we'll see when it happens. Same with the area next to the shed, because there's a very large set of area that's like pretty much completely empty behind the pond, and you could do a lot with that space. There's a lot of room there for them to do some stuff. So we'll see. I don't know. That's just hope for the future. Let's see. Higher tier armor, tools, weapons. We figure, as you get harder bugs, harder areas, that stuff's just assumed. Additional anthills, which is cool. So more of that. Maybe additional types of ants, perhaps. Who knows? That would be cool. Additional or insect pet enhancements. So I would say things that make the aphid, which I was kind of saying earlier, which I hadn't read this yet, but maybe more to the point of having your pet be more full featured and more of a companion rather than just a like aesthetic pet, one that actually does damage and stuff like that, which would be super cool. Or one that just carries items, things like, just a utility creature would be really rad. Bird improvements and additional interactions, which super terrifying to think of what they could do with that. Because now as it sits, the bird doesn't acknowledge you really at all. You can shoot arrows and stuff at it and it just goes right through it. So having it, I think playing narratively would be cool. Additionally, just having any kind of interaction with it would be cool. But having a much larger creature that you cannot attack or do anything with is really scary. That could do potential damage to you. But I mean, if you think about it, a group of 4 small kids probably wouldn't do much to it's a crow, so it's a big bird anyway. But we don't know. We'll see. Here we've got more for the future. So the planned ones here, from what I understand, is more like this section here, the koi pond and zipline, all that. That's coming soon. This is planned main features that will be happening, and this is stuff they're looking at for the future. So additional backyard environments for sure. We figured, like I just said, with the shed and the areas over there. Additional creatures and insects. I think that's obvious too, because they've got a lot to pull from. There's a lot of bugs in the real world, so we can do that. Weather and then backyard changing events, which are 2 things I just touched on previously, and I think again, the possibilities for that are huge. And I'm really excited to see what they do. We already started to see that a little bit with the footprints coming in, which leaves you to wonder, I don't know if that means that we're going to get more stuff or not like that, but or more things involving the human component or a full-size human, whatever. But I feel that that's probably what they're, hinting at, which is, again, why I say, and I've said previously, games like this and early access and stuff like this, sort of like The Forest. This game is really similar to The Forest, I feel like. That it's good to get in early on these games. Like, everything might not be as pristine as you want for the game portion of it, but seeing the way that the world evolves, I think, is more in line narratively than what may even happen with the story itself. But seeing the world kind of come together and change as you're in it. Because if you really think about it, if you're in the situation, you probably wouldn't have a real handle on what's going on. Granted, we've seen, certain areas and stuff we can't get to that would obviously have more story stuff in it. But speaking objectively, I think that you would not be sure of what's happening for a while. Now, granted, some people obviously have passed 200 or so or 300 or so in-game days and stuff like that. So obviously that's a little extreme, because that would put you at almost a year back there before you had any idea what was going on. But we're starting to see it a little bit with the pond, the sprinkler system by Rash. It's you've got a few bugs sort of coming in there and the changing a little bit. So you're seeing this sort of evolvement of the yard's landscape as things come in there, bugs show up and other stuff. And I think that overall fits in with the design of the game really well. So it's one of those few early access things where, I personally love early access, and for that reason, for most of them. But some games don't necessarily lend well to that. But I think this specifically does. Sort of in the same way, like Fallout 76. I'm sure a lot of you have played that or have played Fallout just as by virtue of this being Obsidian game and the style of game. But with that game, you started out as the last survivor, and then people eventually came a year later and showed up. which, you know, you could argue one way or the other with how that you know, manifested, if that was a business decision, if that was just like eureka, we found a way to make this make sense or whatever. But having played that game from the beginning until that point, it does lend itself well to that narrative where it's like, yeah, you were the first, and now people have finally settled it and fleshed it out a little bit. It would have been cooler to see that sort of happen in increments rather than just all at once, because it was sort of like, there's no base here, and then boom, they have like a full setup in one day. But you, again, just I think the way that the additions are rolling out kind of monthly or bi-monthly or whatever, I think that really lends well to that. But I'll move on to something else. But that just something I felt like saying. Additional crafting materials. I figure we get that. Powered buildings is a big one, because I was kind of wondering if we would get some kind of automation or stuff like that would come into the game. And yeah, I think that would be really super interesting. I wonder how those mechanics would play out. I'm assuming you would probably get some kind of battery or something and do that, which would be pretty neat. Yeah, I don't know. That one's interesting. I really don't know what they would do with that potentially, but there's a lot of options, so we'll see. More control over world options and settings, which is cool. I think for especially people who play creative mode, I think we would still like to see more creatures in there, even if they're not going to attack you or do anything, just to see them, because the world is really barren when you do creative, and it's a little restrictive, I think, still. So it would be cool to see some of that stuff, even though I do like the creative mode. I wish there was a bit more open-ended nature to it. More defenses, because we really only have like 2, so that would be great. Framework for player-generated gameplay. Now that's super interesting, because that sort of leads to the idea of either people making their own sort of story content, or they're making their own, like workshop support, basically, is what that would mean. Which I don't know how that would really function on the Xbox, but if they had, like, pop-up dungeons, for instance, you can make a bunch of stuff, and then it's gone through the game engine itself rather than the Steam Workshop. So there is a potential to have that mod support in the game in like a different section that they could, you know, host that content, and you could go pull it from there. Which if they do dedicated servers, it wouldn't be too out of the scope of things to do that. But we'll see. I don't know. That one's really interesting. That's like maybe one of the ones I'm really the most curious about. Higher tier structures, sure, we figure, you know, because the stuff we have now is not super sturdy, so that would make sense. And then more decorations, again, another thing that's fairly obvious, but, you know, good to know that, yeah, we're obviously making more stuff. And then the very last thing is considerations, which is stuff they're trying to do, but, you know, don't know if they can do with their current setup, and that's dedicated servers, which is something a bunch of people have definitely asked for, because the peer-to-peer stuff, the multiplayer in the game does work a little strangely, especially because it's all off of one host. Actually, playing Divinity, that's sort of how it's done. It's like one person has their main game and story, and then you slot into that. Which is how this is done. But it is a bummer to go like, oh, I really just want to get on my character for just a second and like adjust my talent points or whatever, so whenever we all log back in, no one's waiting for that, you know? And same here, it's like, I wish it was sort of set up to where you could just go, you know, this is our server with our stuff on it, you can build out here. Because I think a lot of people would probably enjoy playing this game even without the story stuff in it. Just the idea of surviving in the backyard, and especially when they add more bugs and environments and all this other stuff. I think there's a lot of room for that, but yeah, I think that's all I have. I just wanted to point this out because it's a huge set of features, and there's a lot of stuff they discussed and things we've definitely all talked about before, but getting that clarification and actually seeing it in an area or a setup from them specifically is super, super excellent. And I always love seeing a roadmap, even if it's not like, there's no dates for any of this stuff, obviously. So we don't know specifically when we're getting it, but the fact that it's there and then we have that information is huge. So, yeah. Sorry that was a bit of a long video, and I'm definitely winded now for talking for 20 straight minutes. But at any rate, thank you guys for watching, as always. If you have any stuff you'd like me to cover, you have any other things you'd like to ask, feel free to leave it in the comments. I'll also make one addendum to my last video. The water flies or fleas, I think they are, you can kill them. You need a spear, and they drop meat that's used for smoothies. So I didn't realize that, but I had some people in the comments mention that and point that out to me. So thank you guys for doing that, because I didn't know, and I didn't test it. I didn't even think about the spear, to be completely honest. I was like, my main weapons don't work, so these things can't kill. or can't be killed. And then they also didn't have a nameplate come up, so I figured they were just, you kind of go right through them. They don't really react to you. So, yeah, now that you can attack them, know that's another information. But yeah, but again, as always, thank you guys for watching. Subscribe, all that stuff if you like what we're doing here. And I will see y'all in the next one.